those bad dreams are still inside you.
There's nothing wrong with me.
How I came involved, now looking back, whatever it is, 50, 60 years, I can't remember had John Boorman been in touch with me, because we'd done the film Leo the Last together previously. Anyway, I was working on a film directed by Stuart Rosenberg called The Voyage of the Damned. So if I was asked to do The Heretic, I wouldn't have been available. But what happened is that John then used an editor he'd used previously, I think, on his documentary films. I think it was very difficult for that other editor to adjust to life in California. And I think he really had a kind of almost a breakdown. So I was asked if I would do it. And I think I had literally one day off between finishing The Voyage of the Damned, which was quite a big film, and flying out to LA. So then I had to pick up the pieces and look at what they'd already shot. They were still filming.
Oh, good morning, Sharon.
And then work on it from there. The deal was, it was an agreement with the unions, and I think the same applied here. If an American came to work here, there had to be someone employed in the same job who didn't actually do the same work, because I think normally on film, as against now it's all digital and different, but on film, we would have two assistants, so there'd be a first and then a second assistant. So one way of doing it was that the first assistant would cover, from the union point of view, for the editor.
Are you all right?
Your heart was fibrillating. I don't know what went wrong. I couldn't bring you out of it. Father Lamont had to go in to contact you. He brought you out of it.
At that time, John's right-hand man was a character called Roscoe Pallenberg. And, you know, Roscoe he would do a bit of sort of extra writing if needed, you know, odd dialogue and things like that, and would help in any way required. But of course, with Morricone, who didn't speak much English, he was invaluable, so he was the interpreter. So we all went off to Rome to meet Morricone. He later came to Hollywood with his wife to do the recording. They worked on a series of themes that matched elements of the story of what was going on. We usually used an American machine called a moviola, where you could run sound and picture at the same time, but on two separate tracks. So you'd have the picture with a viewer where you could see it. In this country, I think we've always paid more attention to the soundtrack, particularly the sound effects. I think on American films, they tended to use more music. And I realized that what they did is there would be a team of sound editors, and each would be given a reel of the film, which is 10 minutes, which they then fit, you know, what they saw. If there's a car going past, they put the noise on. If there's a gun going off, they put the noise on. But so it wasn't as coherent as where you have a single sound editor and he follows it through.
What now?
Locusts! Spraying for locusts! This is the traditional route of the plague!
Often the sound, the original sound, is not good enough, or for some reason you need to redo it. So then you get the actor back, and then they have to speak the lines to synchronize with the picture. Well, Earl Jones, who was a leading performer in the film, who was very much a stage actor, I think, and was not keen on the process. So he actually wouldn't look at the screen and synchronize. He said, I will give you the lines and you have to fit them. So that's what he did. He sort of read it 3 or 4 times, and then the sound editor then had to fit that to the lips.
Locusts? Yes. Let me show you. This is one of the main control stations in Equatorial Africa.
When I look back on the 2 previous Boorman films, which were both very much location films, and this was very much a studio film, so although it appeared to be outdoors, it was all studio sets. I think this was more of a fantasy, really. But what we did do is something we'd done on Deliverance, which is we took 2 or 3 spare days at the end of shooting to do what we would call pick-up shots, which, bits and pieces that just didn't quite work, or it needed amplifying in some way. But, I mean, it was interesting in that it was, at the time, the main studio picture. Fun enough, I then came back to London, and my next assignment was being supervising editor on Derek Jarman's film Jubilee, which couldn't have been more different, from sort of big-time Hollywood to sort of backstage, almost home movies.